Hey everyone, it's Ryan Lizza with Telus News. With me, my old friend Steve Schmidt from The Warning on Substack. Steve, how are you? How was your weekend?
All good. How are you, Ron? Good to see you.
Good, good. So we should let everyone know we're going to try and do this weekly now, um, and maybe by next week we'll have a name for this.
Could be. Could
All
be.
right, let's um let's start with Elon, Steve. Um, You wrote a bit about it last week. What's the what's the legacy of Elon Musk now that he's allegedly, packed up and gone from Washington?
So I'm gonna answer that, but I also want to get to the end of the question, which is this proposition that Elon Musk has put forward now in this interview where he sits down and CBS reporter asks him about all of his vandalism of the government and the work that we call Doge. And Elon Musk goes, "Well, no, no, no. I want to talk about space, where we're just supposed to talk about space." And so, there are a couple television shows that have been pretty broadly iconic in recent years, have gotten a lot of attention. They're all the Taylor Sheridan series: Yellowstone, 1883, 1923. And I'm going to do a bit of a spoiler here. If you haven't seen the show, don't listen. If you want to know, but enough time has passed. There's a protagonist or an antagonist that starts the range war named Banner in 1923, and he is the nemesis of Harrison Ford. And at the end of 1923, Banner, who realizes that he's serving these really wicked aims of a really wicked guy, um, decides he's going to try to leave Montana on the train with his family and get out of the end of the war that he started. And there's this scene where Harrison Ford comes up to Banner at the train station. He's basically, "Where are you going, Banner?" And that's the fundamental proposition for Elon Musk, right? Where are you going? Right. So a couple of hours after January 20th, this man, right, it was obvious to me, and I think this is deeply related to some of the Biden stories. But anyway, the notion that he couldn't tell that Elon Musk was drug addled is horseshit. And so Elon Musk is drug addled and he's out there acting incoherently for 130, 140 days, does more damage to the American government, to the constitutional system. Bill Gates accurately says the specter that we're seeing is the richest man in the world, killing with his decisions some of the world's poorest, treating patriotic Americans who serve the government like insects, from the Nazi salute on down. Elon Musk leaves Washington, this black eye, disgraced, a failure with who knows what data on all of us, a lawless man who engaged in corrupt acts, who calls himself a patriot but is an arson, a vandal. And this guy's 52. And every day for the rest of his life, he will be accounting for the war he started and waged against government of the people, by the people, for the people, that my side will win. And my side, meaning the American side that believes in the US Constitution, and all of these lawless people who think that they can do whatever they want to whomever they want because Donald Trump gave them a wink or the nod, or they took too many drugs, whatever it may be, whatever delusions they have, right, are all starting to come into a greater contact with reality. And that's what Elon Musk is figuring out as he gets back to Texas, that the valuations of his companies have been wrecked, that his future is bleak. He's not going to Mars. He's going to lose his defense contracts. He's going to lose his security clearances. a lot of these companies are going to be defenestrated from the ability to do any of the things that he wants to do. He made his move, and in those early hours, when he gave three Nazi salutes, if I had said how it would end 140 days later, nobody, nobody would have said, no matter what I said, that it could have conceivably gone worse than the worst case that I laid out in that. So Elon Musk is in a lot of trouble for the rest of his days. And his service has been a disaster and a harbinger of real catastrophe that's barreling down the proverbial railroad track at the American people that cannot be averted now because of Elon Musk, because of Donald Trump.
I think we're going to be asking this question for a long time. Maybe you've thought about it and have an answer. But what what happened to this guy? I mean, I'll admit to being one of these people who was an admirer of Musk. Bought the Tesla back in 2017 when when it was still early. Was impressed with how he ran his companies. But then he went about buying at the time, one of the most important communication tools in the world, Twitter, and turned it into a cesspool of not just right wing lunatics, but white supremacists and Nazis and just the worst of the worst. The richest man in the world turned one of the most important communication tools in the world into a place where Nazis and white supremacists were welcomed and were at the top of your feed. I mean, well, I'll never be able to compute that fact, and then becomes obsessed with the MAGA movement at some point. Helps Trump get elected. I still don't think the full story of his power and influence during last year's election has been told when he dumped $300 million into the campaign, and then sets about sabotaging, just torching the federal government. Now, I could understand if this guy was motivated by the regulatory state that was coming after his different companies, and it was just a straight up corrupt bargain. Let me, Donald Trump, let me get in there and fire all the people that are making life difficult for Tesla and SpaceX and the rest. I would understand that. That story is as old as the hills. What I don't quite understand is how his first order of business was to eliminate USAID. Um, there are credible estimates of hundreds of thousands of deaths over that. As you point out, Steve, when Bill Gates had the temerity to point that out instead of dealing with it, Elon just came back at him with some disgusting ad hominem attack. Um, and the guy just looked like he lost his fucking mind. And I don't, I we're so close to this. It's such a crazy story, Steve, at the end of the day. And then for all of it, um, he's not even going to get his EV credits renewed. The Biden administration, in that sense, was his best friend. So, do you have any explanation of what the hell happened to this guy?
Well, at the end of the day, what he is a fascist. And he is the grandchild of Canadian Nazis and the son of a deeply disordered man. He comes from a lot of mental illness and sickness and evil, right, in a straight line. And I'm not making any of this up. He's a Nazi. Now, Henry Ford, right, invented the production line automobile, and Adolf Hitler had a picture of Henry Ford on his credenza. And Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh, who was a great national hero and very brave, who flew across the Atlantic after the fact, they talked about the fact that when they met one another, they talked about the Jews. And so what Elon Musk is not novel. He's a political extremist. He's the richest man in the world. He is the recipient of unprecedented corporate welfare, $38 billion. And in our society, we worship wealth as brilliance. And so we've looked at the peculiarities and the eccentricities of this addled, deranged, disordered guy and said, well, he's the richest in the world, so he must be a genius. And what you see is somebody who is saying that, listen, at the core, and this is always a warning, no pun intended, but subscribe to the warning for those of you out there. But this is always a warning. When somebody pulls themselves out as, well, I am a part of a superior element of the human race. Let's call it the master race. And therefore, right, what I have to do is I have to have 100 children, because the sperm of the master race is both potent and powerful and necessary for the survival of human civilization. And that my sperm, right, my offspring are going to be the people that go to Mars and begin the new civilization to deal with the fact that Earth is collapsing. And so Elon Musk, whether it's that or Peter Thiel and the strangeness of, I want to build floating cities on plastic garbage in the sea that are sovereign nations, whatever strangeness lurks around the fringe ideas, when you marry it with wealth, all of a sudden, no matter how stupid it becomes, there's an audience of PR people, of news people, of all sorts of people that will say the idiocy is genius. And so Elon Musk has been a foremost beneficiary of that. And one of the greatest acts of corruption in American history is obviously any one person being able to spend $338 million on behalf of a presidential candidate, which I guess I'd be for if um, Trump had to have a permanent Tesla brand scarred into his forehead, right? If that was the price at a 338 million, I guess I'm okay with it. But aside from that, right, it's as corrupt as it comes. And it's the gateway to everything that we're seeing. But the truth of the matter is that Elon Musk is an anti-Semite. Elon Musk is a Nazi. How do I know that? Why do I say that? Because Nazi philosophy, it's a dogma, and he shares enough belief with the original version, National Socialism, and its theories and its diktats and its mysticisms and its drug use, which was endemic amongst top Nazis, that he qualifies also through family lineage. He is a dangerous vandal who came with a chainsaw, wrecked hundreds of thousands of people's lives, has already killed hundreds of thousands or more with lies, with propaganda, and and the damage he did hasn't even been felt by anybody yet, even though already you can add up the butcher's bill to 300,000 people. I've said for a long time the most dangerous immigrant who ever came to the United States of America, who did more harm to America than any other immigrant ever. 70 million people, right, including my ancestors and yours, that came to these shores, that breathed their first breath from somewhere else, out of the total population of 700 million Americans that have ever been, half of all Americans alive right now, right? Most dangerous immigrant that ever came to this country, bar none, bar none, before the assertion of Elon Musk into our faces, was Rupert Murdoch. And now he has been topped by Elon Musk, who has brought fascism to America, wrapped in the flag and carrying the cross. It was long prophesied by that apocryphal quote.
The the effort you mentioned at the top of Elon Musk, suddenly his Doge assignment is over. He's popping up on CBS with the Occupy Mars shirt and just like that, trying to go back and rebrand himself as the SpaceX Tesla genius and almost like put this all behind him. Um, so two things on this, Steve. One is from day one, if you looked at the polls, Musk was always more unpopular than Trump, and he was clearly an anchor around his neck. Um, so I suppose there's some satisfaction to be had in the fact that some of the physics of politics work. If you do something as reckless as what Musk has done the last few months, you eventually end up out of the government and sort of kick to the curb. Um, but the guy seems to have this view that he can just sort of put it all behind him, and he's going to go back and rescue these companies like everyone around the world, not just in the United States, is going to forget all of this. He obviously has an incredibly cynical view of the public and the stupidity of the American people. It's not me saying that. It's what I believe he thinks. Um, and I think he's one of these people who just think nothing matters. He's got Twitter and the MAGA movement still behind him, and he can go off and reinvent himself and return to the old Elon. Clearly, behind the scenes, the leadership of these corporations were pressuring him to stop, destroying the value of these companies. Is he going to get away with it? Is he going to be able to reverse that image?
No. Um, it's completely delusional, and so this is why, and to kind of segue and jump, this Biden story and this Jake Tapper book has relevance to this moment. Is that Democrats have to deal with a reality, and it's this: we have a fascist regime in Washington that is utterly lawless, and and it's unpopular and it's failing, and the wheels are coming off. But the Democratic Party's approval level is 24%. And so therefore, right, it's like trying to be in a rock fight with somebody who's on top of the 5-story building and you're on the ground, right? And the rock dropping side of that fight is enjoying it because you can't reach them. And so what the 25% means is that we're having a standoff in the country. And it doesn't matter about what the leadership of the Democratic Party says to the voter in the country from Washington. The voter is not letting go of the gaslighting, not by Democrats, but by the leaders of the Democrats who went out and told them over and over again something that wasn't so, called the other side liars, which they are, but then lost an election to the most prolific and dangerous fascist movement in American history because that movement was seen as more honest when it was led by the biggest liar there ever had been. It's an extraordinary failure that requires now, as we're getting ready to set out on a journey where the country's at stake, is there room for those people who did that, who orchestrated that, in our proverbial wagon train? And the answer to that has got to be no. And and the reality of what I'm talking about is there are leaders, for example, like Jake Auchincloss, who's a congressman from Massachusetts, who's talking intelligently, articulately, eloquently about the things that have to be done. And his Substack, which I recommend people follow, uh, is titled "Simple but Not Easy." And so when we look ahead, next Democratic president, unencumbered by the past, job one is to defang the fascist presidency, right? And it's to get hold of power in 26 on the House and on the Senate side with enough people, Democrats, independents, opposed to this madness to put a check on Trump. But in 2028, to advance fundamental reform, ethics reform, restrictions on the power of the presidency to clean up this absolute lawlessness. And when that happens, it begins with day one, hour one, right before the lunch. Elon Musk security clearances are stripped. Everyone from SpaceX is locked out of NASA. If it shuts down the space program, so be it. SpaceX will blink and get rid of its CEO. But there will be congressional testimony under oath. And the idea that Trump will blanketly pardon everybody who engaged in wanton criminality, no. Where is Hamas one given by the Qatari government going? I mean this, right? I would advise a presidential candidate to go and say that I imagine Donald Trump, if he ever gets a ride in it, will try to fly on that plane on an Air Force base on January 20th of 2029. It will be seized by the government by 2 p.m., and it will be sunk off of Mar-a-Lago in the Atlantic Ocean as an artificial coral reef, designated as such under the Antiquities Act by my administration if you're running as a Democrat, right? That there will be a season of cleanup in aisle 5 that is tough, that is relentless. The assault on the Constitution is not a figment of my imagination. It is happening, and it is being warped in its descriptions by a pliant and capitulant corporate media that's as responsible for the feckless leadership of the Democratic Party for the travesty at hand as anything else.
All right, I want to talk about the Democrats a little bit more, Steve, the, because listening to you, it seems like you think that anyone who served in the Biden administration or is related to that era is just going to have to be part of, in the rearview mirror. That there truly has to be a completely new lineup of outsiders who have no nothing to do with those 4 years. And I mean, my own view of this is, people talk about Raimondo running. Obviously, Pete Buttigieg is going to run. People talk about Mitch Landrieu. Pick your Biden administration, senior member. I think they're all just going to be crippled by what happened those 4 years, and fairly or not, and in the same way that Kamala Harris was crippled by the Biden era, and fairly or not, whatever you think of the current obsession with Biden's cognitive decline, as reported by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, and I know there are a lot of people who hate Trump and want to see Trump gone, who are annoyed by the fact that the media is turned this into such a big issue. But put all that aside, it does seem to me that if you are an outsider in the Democratic Party, maybe a governor, but maybe not even some of these governors who were around during this era and supporting Biden, you are going to have an answer for, what did you know? When did you know it? And why didn't you do anything? Or am I overstating that?
We already know the answer. And this is the fundamental problem with the Tapper book. Everybody saw this. Everybody knew it. I saw it. I knew it. I wrote about it. I talked about it. I helped Dean Phillips walk out onto the public stage, and I was attacked. I was defamed, right, by all sorts of people in the name of democracy. There's an astonishing um, series of anecdotes in the book, the dropping of the race card on Dean Phillips, right, and by implication on people in New Hampshire, right? That it was inherently racist for New Hampshire to go first at the expense of South Carolina. And so it was a story of groupthink. Somebody just said on this, stop with this topic.
A
No,
lot of people, a lot of
hang,
people,
right,
people don't. A lot of
hang,
people,
like they
yeah.
get off the podcast. I mean, no. And because I'm going to tell you why. Because I was one of the people shouted down for 3 years when there was still time to avoid this catastrophe. Right. And so after the crash, right, when there's a total collapse of honesty in the country, right, maybe those people ought to listen to me for a second. Right. 'Cause that's how I feel about it. And the thing about it is, Joe Scarborough, let's talk about him specifically, right? Because it indicts the whole of the media, right? He is the avatar of this. He says on his show, every single person who comes on Morning Joe, all of them, 100% of them say, I can't believe Biden is going to run for reelection off camera, and then goes on camera and says this is the best Biden ever. So Joe Scarborough recognized that. So for the 900 people with us, what I want you to understand is that Ryan and I got to know the real conversation that was happening, but you didn't. And I want you to know what the real conversation was happening, because there shouldn't be two conversations between the media and the leaders of the country that the American people are kept out of. And so the conversation that was dishonest was the one that's happening on camera, when all of the Democrats are saying, oh, he's good to go. Now, what the Democrats said, looking at Trump and all of their Republican colleagues for these years, was, oh my God, every one of those people I know, because that's my friend and I've served with them for 20 years. They're not for Trump. And I can't believe they're all saying out loud all of these things about Trump. Well, 10 years later, we have mass federal agents running around the country, snatching people, arresting people in congressional offices, all matter of degradations and depredations of the Constitution of the United States taking place. And so what the Democrats did is they got in line behind an absurdity, just like the Republicans did. And what Joe Scarborough did, after acknowledging what the reality was, is he looks into the camera and he tells his audience, F you, if you don't believe, a direct quote, F you, if you don't believe this is the best version of Joe Biden ever. And the American people saw it, and the American people said, burn it fucking down. In a contest of dishonesty and gaslighting, they chose the biggest scumbag in American history. And here we are. So how do we get out of that? So I don't think it disqualifies Pete Buttigieg, but he's going to have to explain how much did he see Biden. And the truth of the matter is Pete Buttigieg probably met with Joe Biden one-on-one once during the entire presidency. And he ran the Department of Transportation, and he's going to have to account for what he did there, because that's his executive experience. But if you do what Jeb Bush did in 2016, which is to say, when you're asked a question, knowing then what you know now about Iraq, would we have invaded Iraq again? The question was already known. The answer was, by the people in the audience. The question was really, will you tell the truth to us at your brother's expense? And he wouldn't. And so that's the meaning of the question. Who's going to gaslight, and who's going to bullshit? Because there's some hard truths that have to be told. And you have to go into the battle against MAGA with clean fucking hands, period. Right? You have to walk without hypocrisy, because the lesson of the last 10 years is this. The one thing that the American people will not tolerate, right, above Trump scumbaggery, is democratic hypocrisy. right? The idea that Trump's corrupt, but when Bob Menendez has the gold bar sewn into his jacket, that Chuck Schumer says he was a great public servant for the people of New Jersey, and now Chuck Schumer and the committee that so misjudged 2022 and 2024 is going to try to architect from Washington who gets to run in the Senate elections in 2026 with a heavy hand? No way. And so that's what's going on with all of this stuff right now. It's going to be a year of disruption and change and overthrow of the political establishment of the country if if we're going to save the country. Because what saves the country is an embrace of Americanism over fascism, not an embrace of Chuck Schumer's version of corporate democratism and appeasement versus MAGA, because people would rather have MAGA. I guess they'd rather burn it down than keep it going on the same route, which is too bad because it didn't seem like it was all that bad to me. But if we're going to beat this, right, time to stop pretending that the leaders of a party who remain in place after the disaster, when the party has a 24% approval level and people get pissed at me for talking about it, well, there you go.
Look, I have two reactions to this. One is I understand why a lot of the people watching this don't want to hear about it anymore. I personally at Telus News I haven't covered it very much, and there's a reason. I'm trying to stay focused on Trump. I have no responsibility to cover every single issue. There are millions of issues I don't spend a lot of time on. But since we're talking about this, I think to me the most important issue is Joe Biden. His mission in life was to, as stated by Joe Biden, was to rescue the country from Trump. He won in 2020. He beat Trump. And the only other thing he had to do to keep Trump from coming back, well, there were two things. One, he should have been more aggressive early on with going after Trump and prosecuting him earlier rather than letting it bleed into the election. That you could blame that on Merrick Garland. But the only other thing he had to do is recognize that he wasn't going to win that race. The Democrats needed a primary, and he needed to step aside. He would be one of the most heroic figures, certainly in the Democratic Party. But and if there was a serious primary where a strong candidate emerged and beat Trump, Joe Biden would be celebrated for decades and decades to come. And he didn't do that. And his mission, and so people who are mad right now about spending so much time on Biden, it's because of Trump is taking a torch to our democracy, and they think people like you and me should be focused on that. And I agree with them on that. We should be focused on that. But Joe Biden had one job, was to beat Trump. And the Democratic Party had that one job. And it's important to excavate the decision-making process that led to that very, very serious mistake. Because all the shit we're talking about right now with Elon Musk and the rest might not have happened if he didn't make that mistake. However, where I agree with a lot of the people who are pissed off in the comments about this is I spend a lot of time watching Fox News every night, unfortunately. And you can't understand American politics unless you dive into Fox News and the right-wing
Yep.
media regularly. And what's happening on that side is that this narrative about Biden has just been completely weaponized and frankly exaggerated. Every bad faith actor that you can rattle off the top of your head is using this in the most dishonest way, all the familiar ways. And so while barely touching any of the uh, multiple corrupt acts that Trump is engaging in and the sort of general lawlessness of his administration, it's all about Biden. And we live in an information environment where that's just the natural consequence of a conversation like this. So there's no good faith argument on the other side. The whole Biden thing just gets weaponized and used
Yeah.
for, bad faith arguments. And that that just goes back to the media. Like one side, it's like a tennis match where one side is just playing without a net. There are no fucking rules over there. And the Democrats, at least the net is at least halfway up, if not fully up. Like they get called out by the media, they respond to shame. They were, you mentioned Bob Menendez, but I don't think Joe Biden, if he had been, or a Democrat had been reelected, anyone's going to like pardon Bob Menendez. It's just an
Mhm.
entirely different set of rules that is being played by these by these two teams, and I think that's why people get so upset about the focus on the Biden mistake, which you and I think agree with.
There is common ground here between all of us angry people out there, right? Because we're all on the same side. And this is the fundamental point that I'm trying to make. A small group of people in the White House, they abuse Joe Biden too, but they should be held accountable by not being part of the conversation going forward about what we do here. Jake Tapper has said that what happened here was worse than Watergate, which I guess makes him Bob Woodward, but even better. And Jake Tapper winds up on Megyn Kelly's show. And Jake Tapper's direct quote is, the conservative media was right. The conservative media was right. The conservative media was right about this, Meg. And so, first off, when did it come to be that we had a conservative media and a media and they have different set of facts? It's all bullshit. There's one reality, and the conservative media was not right. What the conservative media did was lie and smear Joe Biden relentlessly for 4 years, while what was seen in plain sight was evaded, avoided, and denied by a corrupt corporate media that Jake Tapper is a part of. So the greatest propaganda victory that the conservative media has had in the moment since it lied and was held to account to the cost at Fox of $1 billion by lying about the stolen election, the vast damage is done. How did that end up? Well, within 4 years' time, a little bit plus of January 6th, Jake Tapper's on his knees in front of Megyn Kelly because he's hawking a book saying the conservative media was right. And so the corruption is killing us. Listen, how do you make the case? I can do it with clean hands about the drug-addled Elon Musk when in fact Hunter Biden isn't just a family member in good standing. Hunter Biden is central to the campaign. Hunter Biden is playing a leading role in the administration. And if you look at the Ukrainian deals with Hunter Biden, it was all real. Who does it give a license to? And so, you know what I want to do? Let's stop talking about the past. You know how we stop talking about the past and get into the future? New fucking people. Period. 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 Right? And so, Jake Auchincloss, Governor Josh Shapiro, Governor Wes Moore, right? I have nothing against Gretchen Whitmer. Okay, but I've been in a couple presidential campaigns. And I know that under pressure in the Oval Office, which is a place she should not have been, she hid behind a blue folder. She's the wrong candidate to be president. Gavin Newsom was the chief gaslighter, and the country doesn't want a governor of California to be president because they look at LA and they look at San Francisco and they look at the lawlessness in vast tracts of California. And I won't take a backseat to anybody about loving California, right? But people will not tolerate it. Gavin Newsom was the guy who went on Fox to say Biden did a great job after the debate.
I was
And so,
there. Yeah.
no, right? And
You know what?
so,
Yeah.
so
Newsom's
who's
in trouble with that
imposing,
appearance.
right? So the opposition to this, right, has to understand each other, right? And I'm not speaking for a movement, but I know that there's a lot of people who agree with me on this, which is this: if one part of the Democratic Party tries to impose a responsible party for the catastrophe as a solution to it, there's going to be a rebellion, right? And that rebellion will elect
Yeah.
JD Vance. But I suspect the side of this that's very angry with the gaslighting side in the Democratic Party, with the Schumercrat side, Marco Rubio was confirmed with 99 votes. I compared Marco Rubio to a guy who would have carried Castro's coat 3 years ago. What is it that I saw about Marco Rubio? Why am I such a genius? Why do I have such insight into the psychology of these people that no Democratic senator has? And you know what? I don't accept that I have some insight or some genius. What I think I have is common fucking sense.
There was such a desire on the part of Democrats to show that they weren't just blanketly opposing every single Trump nominee, that they were just sort of bending over backwards to find someone they could support, to show like, see, it's not just the Tulsi Gabbards and the RFK Juniors. We're not opposing everyone. Um, Rubio's one of the good ones, and you could have seen that coming from a mile away, that Rubio was going to embarrass every Democrat who supported him. Uh,
I
so let Yeah, go ahead.
I for the as a matter of history, the thing that I don't understand is why nobody asserted their power as a U.S. senator on the Democratic side and said, I will not permit this. I will shut this place down. Like, I don't like, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen, right? You try to impose Pete Hegseth on us, on the country, right? You have a kid's wedding this summer or graduation. I'm gonna do everything I can to keep this place in session. I will break the institution to prevent this from happening. I mean, all all in. And for the rest of my life, right? That you look at a Tulsi Gabbard, a Pete Hegseth, the accrual of these people and their confirmations and the damage done in 100 days time. And so one of the things that I said before the inauguration is the government as we comprehend it, it's gone. It's gone, right? It's gone. And it has to be rebuilt for the delivery of services and reimagined. And so just figuring out what happened, right? There is no moving on from this. So, for example, what data does Musk have? What data does the government have? What's been accumulated? What's the nature of the Palantir contract? Has anybody gone through a customs checkpoint with the facial recognition software yet? Does the government intend to install cameras everywhere across the country? Listen, the privacy agenda, the correction needed to deal with the power of these big corporations, how we think about all of this, the cronyism that's destroyed free market capitalism. These are existential issues that require new thinking in a deep vision, that's led not by the advisors and the data in the polling, but by the leader who seeks to get America out of this mess and has some sense of we got to go in this direction. That's what the
Yeah.
country's got to be looking for in 2028.
And a lot of these Doge guys have been left behind. They're embedded in these departments. If you look at some of the stuff that the Washington Post has reported about the end goal of some of this stuff, this piece never got as much attention as I think it deserved. If the Post reporting was right, the end goal of Elon Musk and these Doge children going department by department, picking out all the tech guys, turning the chief information officers, which used to be a bureaucratic uh, civil service position, into a politically appointed person, and extracting the most important data everywhere. And their end goal was to combine every single data set they could get their hands on. Literally, the nightmare scenario that anyone who cares about privacy and civil liberties has been talking about for decades. I mean, the people that are looking really good these days are the libertarians who said, don't build a big federal government because God forbid someone goes in there and combines all this data, we're all fucked. But we had firewalls all over the place uh, to keep this stuff protected, to keep databases siloed. And their whole project, which I don't think gets talked about enough, was to eradicate all of the silos, burn down all the walls, and unleash, AI chatbots to be able to combine all this stuff. That is terrifying. At the same time, Trump uh, fired the two Democratic members of the Privacy and Civil Liberties Oversight Board, which was a post 9/11 war on terrorism, or actually post 9/11 commission board that was set up, was actually empowered, actually had teeth to monitor all this kinds of stuff. So of the 100 different things that Trump has tried to wreck, this Doge project of combining all of the very sensitive data from our tax returns to our medical records to our social security information into one giant database that can be mined is actually like some straight up 1984 shit. And you know Democrats have a
It's
lot of problems.
unacceptable. It's
They
utterly unacceptable.
barely talk about it.
Yeah. It's it's utterly unacceptable. The idea, for example, right, and the science exists now that you could have a genetic test at birth and you're marked for the rest of your life on a probability scale against the AI algorithm of what disease you'll get when, and or what your intelligence might be on some different score against some probability of where you might end up. And
Yeah,
so
it's
this
like a
is
FICO score
a
for your for
right.
your genes.
These are all issues that are no longer future tense. The dystopia is here, and we have to, as free people in a free society, reconcile with all of this. Is that when you look at there, going back to, there's a Netflix documentary about the search for bin Laden, really told from the
Yeah,
CIA perspective.
I just watched it as well.
Going back 20 years, and I served in the Bush administration, no, not yet. I was in the second term. I never liked the name Homeland Security Department. It struck me wrong from the very beginning.
Yeah,
Department of
and
Homeland Security,
it was
and it was
controversial. Worth reminding people that it was controversial at the time. The name.
and it was controversial. All of those critics have been proven right. And so if you're a federal agent, I think there's a question coming in your employment future, which is, did you participate in any public seizures while wearing a mask? You did. Okay. Thank you. Special agent, leave your badge and your weapon on the desk on your way out. Right. And so There's going to be accountability, right? And as the people, and we're sovereign in America, we have to decide. You want tattooed thugs with masks on, jacked up on steroids, kitted up like they're rolling into Kandahar in 2001? You want them operating on America's streets like that? I do not. Now, at the same time, if the situation is such, it really can't indulge the stupidity of people who demand that that debate conform to their language code of defund the police. Because I'm not for defunding the police. What I'm for
Yeah.
is bringing an abusive fascist federal police to heel. And those are different things. And so I think we see the formation of American Gestapo, American Stasi in plain sight. We see outrageous abuses of authority and power taking place every day. And it's got to have a check put on it. And that check, right, really the first opportunity for that, in the hands of the American people is in November of 2026. And things will be much worse by then than they are now.
Well, before that, though, we do have the race in Virginia. That's always a bellwether after the
And New
election,
Jersey, right?
and New Jersey. New Jersey's, a little always gives Democrats a bit of a scare in recent years, but pretty blue. But Virginia, especially in a governor's race, it can be challenging. But the margin, and if it is just a blue state now, the margin will tell us a lot. I want to ask you one other question, Steve, as we wrap up here, and just let's look back at the last 4 months. Bringing up Gretchen Whitmer reminded me of this, because Whitmer made the same mistake that everyone makes with Trump. The Democrats who voted for Rubio made this mistake. People always think they can make a deal with this guy. They think that there's a way to um, negotiate with him, and excuse me, I don't think it overstates things to point out that he works like a mafia boss. He comes in, he demands the protection money, and you think at first maybe it's a good deal, and pretty soon you've lost your restaurant, and maybe by the end of it he's destroyed it for the insurance money. It's classic, and he corrupts everyone he makes a deal with. If you want to psychoanalyze the guy, I think it's this kind of self-hating thing. He hates himself. So how could anyone love him or like him or enter into an agreement with him? He hates people who hold themselves up to high standards of integrity and ethics. And he sees those people as he wants those people to be corrupted. That's why he specifically targets people like that. And we've now seen a plethora of organizations, universities, law firms, politicians, international institutions, countries try and Democrats navigate this choice of engage, negotiate, try and get Trump to not target you, not hurt you, or just full on resistance. It's played out in the most pure way with the executive orders against the universities and the law firms. Let's step back for a second, and what have we learned over these 4 months in terms of what happens when you choose to engage with Trump and the sort of different paths that leads to?
Trump backs down. Taco. And he's the most predictable guy there ever has been. I mean, for
Not
Democrats,
always with. I agree with you on the tariffs, of course, on anything that's going to hurt him. He doesn't care about policy at the end of the day. So if the tariffs don't are fucking up his approval rating, he's going to back down. But he's not backing down on Harvard. He not backing down on these law firms that promised whatever it is, $100 million to do his bidding, right? Um, but the law firms that he went 0 for 3 on, that he targeted but actually resisted and won in court, they're not even appealing those decisions. So they're looking a lot better. Wilmer Hale is looking a whole lot better than our friends at Paul Weiss.
Right.
In terms of, so that's what
And
I'm talking about. In terms of like, when Trump comes after you, there is this choice between playing ball, negotiating, or full on resistance.
there is no compromise to be had with the propositions that Trump has laid out, which is that I'm king and you're not, and that the Constitution doesn't matter. And really, the most sinister declaration of the entire presidency so far, which, right, to paraphrase, was that, any man who saves his country, right, is above all the laws or whatever, is just pure fascist trope. But that's what Trump believes, and that has to be confronted. And so if you get into business with the mob, you stay in business with the mob, and that business relationship terminates on the mob's terms, not on yours. And that's the fundamental issue. So everybody who didn't get into business with Trump and held the line on Trump has done well, right? So the law
Mhm.
firms that capitulated to him are losing a lot of clients. The Democrats, right, the political leadership of the Democratic Party, right, should understand who Donald Trump is by 10 years now, and they don't understand who he is. But over and over again, as we kind of go through this sorting process, you have an appreciation for who's held the line against Trump and who's capitulated on it. And like any collaborator or any collaboration, with an authoritarian element or movement, right? It's always transaction based and it's always justified by for some exigent circumstance of self that, hey, I have to do this because of this or that or the other. But when it comes to confronting Trump effectively, right, there's no question that 5 months in, the world leader who's been most effective is Mark Carney, and that's because he was the guy who gave not an inch.
Yeah. Let's finish up because I know you have your eye on this, Steve. And it's been fascinating to see the parade of world leaders come into the Oval Office and how they navigate this lunatic. Um, the Chancellor of Germany, Friedrich Merz, is coming on Thursday, I believe. Um, what's your What's your prediction about how that's gonna go down? What's this relationship like? Is it like is he more of on the Carney side of things and understanding Trump? Is he, where is he? What should we expect from
Well,
this? And I
Frederick
actually,
Frederick Frederick
no,
Merz has talked very clearly about that the Europeans have to deal with the reality that the United States is not a reliable partner with regard to Russia, with regard to European defense. And so Germany has just for the first time in the post World War II era, maybe the second time, has deployed troops permanently to eastern Lithuania um, on the Russian frontier. It's raised its defense spending to 5% of GDP. It has removed the debt limitations that were really a holy grail of German politics with regard to the necessities of that defense spending. And Mertz is a guy who is coming into office really against a ticking clock. You have the German AfD that Elon Musk, to bring it full circle, is waiting out there. It had its strongest showing ever, and the AfD is the alternative for Deutschland, is a far right Nazi extremist party filled with Nazis identified as such, and that has picked up mainstream support on the immigration issue. And it's an anti-American party. It's a pro-Putin party. It's anti-democracy. And so Mertz is dealing with a lot of the anger, a lot of the issues that we see in all of these Western democracies, and his success in Germany, and his being seen in Europe as a leader who can stand up to Trump as the chancellor of the most powerful country in Europe, right? There's going to be a lot of European eyes on the Oval Office encounter, which is now a point of tremendous anxiety for any world leader who comes in there, who has to, as you pointed out, be prepared to deal with the realities of the old Turkish proverb, which is that when a clown goes to the castle, the clown doesn't become a sultan. The castle becomes a circus, and that's what the Oval Office is. And so it's what that's what the chancellor is going to be dealing with. He's got to go to the circus, and it's one that has a lot of consequences for security all around the world.
Yeah. All right, Steve, we covered a lot. Is there anything else on your mind? We should remind people we're going to try and do this every Monday now. I think we need a name for it. If people have a name for this weekly conversation, throw it in the comments. We'll take it up. Um, Anything else on your mind?
No, I just, one of the things, I guess, like the thing on, that makes me go like more bananas than anything is that's changed in my adult life, right? Politicians used to have supporters, right? Not fans, right? And we have a sensibility, right, by so many scores of millions of adults in the country, that politicians, that they become idols. Um, and there is a thin skinness um, amongst the population, amongst citizens. If God forbid they should hear a criticism directed at their side when it comes to some of the most powerful people in the world. And when you have these jobs and you have the responsibilities, uh, man, a lot of consequences. I don't doesn't give me any pleasure, to be honest, and to say that the Iraq War was a disaster, and that there were profound mistakes made by people I worked for. Right, but you have to face up to these things, right? And I just encourage everybody, right, to the issue here isn't about Jill and Joe Biden, right? It's not about the
We're going
health
back
of
to
the
Biden. We're going
Democratic
back to
Party.
Biden.
It's about the country. It's about the country. It's the only thing that matters. And
Yeah.
and the country is in a lot of trouble right now. And anybody who soft soaps the danger, right, of this moment, and by these people, boy, are they doing you a disservice. When you see the gleaming eyes of the Fox News zealots, when you see the smirk of a Jesse Waters, have an appreciation for the term "little Eichmann," and why that was a popular phrase in the 1960s. And I'll just leave you with this last thing, which is that the man who interrogated Eichmann was a German Jew named Avner Less, who made it to Israel. His whole family was wiped out in the Holocaust, but he interrogated Eichmann for 275 hours, and then he talked about it 20 years later, and he was asked, did he get anything out of the experience? And he said, yeah, it gave me my faith in democracy, because there are little Eichmanns everywhere. They're all around us, but they're latent in a democracy. Uh, but they turn deadly in an instant in a dictatorship of the left and the right. And and the way out of this is to get reconnected with our American faith. American faith is pluralistic. It's tolerant, right? It appreciates dissent. It looks at a senator and a member of the House with some skepticism. It regards wealth and power with a little bit of skepticism, right? And in the end, what we share, right, is freedom, a faith in liberty and freedom, and it's a great country, and it's a great idea, and we got to preserve it, and it's under assault. And with that, thank you all for getting on, and it's a real pleasure to be with you, and I really look forward to doing this every week.
Well said, Steve. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you then. We got a bunch of
You
good
got it.
suggestions about what to call it, so I'm going to look through those. And I'll push this out. Anyone who's not subscribing to Tell Us News, please check us out. Please subscribe. We also have a great conversation from last Friday with the great former federal appeals judge Michael Ludig. We're going to be pushing that out later today. I wanted to wait so it didn't get lost in the weekend. So thanks again, Steve. I'll talk to you Monday.
You got it.
Take care.
Take care, Ron. Bye.